What is up, Vibers? Welcome back to another episode of the Vibe with Kai podcast. I am so excited for all of you to hear this conversation today because today we're talking about something that I know a lot of us struggle with every single day, and that is the struggle to constantly perform, to constantly want to please, and to push ourselves to the brink of burnout. My guest today is Sue Heilbronner. Man, Sue is a powerhouse. She is a former federal prosecutor, a tech CEO, and now a sought after executive coach who helps leaders break free from the unconscious patterns that hold them back. She is also the author of a brand new book. It's called Never Ask for the Sale, which completely flips the script on how we approach our work and our worth. I gotta tell you, we get into some really deep stuff in this episode. We talk about passionate ambivalence, which, trust me, is a concept that's going to change your life. We also talk about how to spot those quiet internal contracts, the ones that we make with ourselves that drive imposter syndrome and anxiety. Sue is direct, she's hilarious, and she brings this incredible mix of vulnerability and a no-nonsense wisdom kind of attitude that I love, and I think that you're going to love it too. Before we dive in, do me a huge favor, make sure you are subscribed to this podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you have a second, leave a review because it helps reach more people who need this kind of community, like the one that we got going on right now. You can also follow me at The Vibe with Kai on all social media or visit my official website at thevibewithkai.com. And hey, if you want some more tools to help you navigate your own brain, check out my digital store for all of my ADHD digital guidebooks and deep dive videos. And lastly, come on over and join our family over on Patreon for exclusive deep dives and strategies that I don't post anywhere else. It's only $5 a month. All of those links that I just mentioned, they're down in the description of this episode. All right, my friends, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with the amazing Sue Heilbronner. I want to welcome our guest, Sue, to the podcast today. Hi, Sue.
Hey, Kai.
Yeah.
First of all, could you please introduce me every day for the rest of my life? I never want to do it myself.
Absolutely.
You
I
are great
I
at that.
I am always so excited when I have someone like you on the show because you're just like you're full of so much knowledge and insight that I know my audience would really love. So the least I could do is have a good introduction at least while you're
Well,
providing some insight.
that is very, very generous, and I'm so glad to count myself among your audience
Oh,
because you
I'm
are a very
really
dynamic man.
I try. I just try to put out the same energy that I want to get back. So
Aw,
it's as simple as that.
love
Um,
that.
I I wanna start with passionate ambivalence because I love that. I love that idea for people that are hearing about passionate ambivalence for the first time. How would you describe that in the simplest, most human way possible?
First of all, I think you did a great job of describing it. And the way I would describe it, and I think the beauty of this and getting the chance to talk to you is that it's really connected to mindset and mental well-being in business, in my opinion. So we'll focus primarily on business for the purposes of this. But frankly, I think the same thesis applies in dating or getting into that great grad school you want to get into or any place where you want to build followership or magnetism in the world. So the idea is you get to be as passionate as you are about anything that you may get to do. You're allowed to be passionate. And I think just want to say, like, our culture tries to discourage you from doing that. I think that there's this common wisdom, I won't even say wisdom. There's a common refrain that says, hey, don't get too excited. Don't tell anyone you're pregnant until you're past your third month. And as if that's possible, right? And so you can get excited. And ambivalence is this idea that even though you're allowed to be excited, if you can coach yourself into a mindset of being unattached about whether you'll get a certain job, whether you'll make your next sale, whether you'll hit your growth projections for your company this year, if you can keep a little healthy unattachment to that, then you will be more likely not just to be happier, which is cool, but also to achieve your goals.
Why is it so hard, Sue? It's like it's because it sounds so simple, right? Like we listen to it, we hear it, and then we try to put it out in the world, and it's just so difficult because you talk a lot about letting go of the outcome while still like deeply caring for your work. It's so hard. How do we find that balance when it's so hard for most of us to find that balance,
Okay, well,
internally?
I have a thought that
Yeah.
just as you were talking, just the way you were talking about that, and that's I think if we realize that we have some belief that our begging or lowering our price point or doing more for the same money, even if it makes us uncomfortable, we have a belief that all of those tactics will make it more likely for us to succeed. And
Mhm,
candidly, let's take this into the personal life view because I think this belief applies there too. You're dating a new person,
mhm.
and that person wants you to be more upbeat. No, you could not possibly be more upbeat, but they want a different person to be more upbeat, more heart connected. They want them to make more money, all these things. So the other person's like, okay, cool. I got to be more heart connected. I got to go get a different job to be making more money because, Sarah wants me to do these things. And they make all sorts of accommodations. And I imagine everyone listening to this podcast knows that that is a recipe for disaster. It's possible Sarah will say, sure, yes, now I want to be with you. You're the man I've always dreamed about. Yeah, that's possible. But even if she does for 5 minutes, in minute six, she is likely to find you wanting in some other way. So
Right,
if you can just let go and show up as you, including in the sales process, and you've done a bunch of homework to clear limiting beliefs, clear some blockers, get in touch with your imposter voice. So you're not talking from there, you're talking from your essence quality voice. If you can do all that, you are likely to win. And I think the reason it's hard in answer to your question is we have some story that we're more likely to win if we beg. And it's just not true.
right. Right, right. And what's great is that like you say this because you work with people from all over. You've worked with you made it you work with leaders from Facebook and Salesforce, like the biggest of the biggest, and so you're making it attainable. This kind of mindset to be attainable for everyday Joe Schmoes like me, right? So like being able to work with these leaders in these big companies, what's one thing that even the most successful leaders quietly struggle with? I think that hearing some of this about like for the people that aren't at those big companies, I think hearing what those leaders struggle with will be a little bit validating. I think, to hear some of the
That's
things that they
great.
struggle with. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my pleasure. And you talk about this often in your pod. I have never, ever met an honest senior leader, including at the Fortune 100 companies, gigantic companies,
Yeah.
that doesn't wrestle with imposter voice and negative self talk ever.
Mhm.
It comes up in situations where it just happened again today. A head of HR, head of hiring and, people at a company. I
Mhm.
was asking her why she was withholding some of her opinions on decisions by the CEO.
Mhm.
And her answer was, well, I assume that when the CEO has a decision, it's fully baked and he is ready to have me just go do it. And she said, but honestly, I feel hesitant to challenge it because I'm not sure I'm really being invited. And look, some of that is probably on the CEO if he is not inviting feedback, but some of it is also on her. Like what she's optimizing for, which is very common, is I want to wake up on a Wednesday. I want to have a totally gratifying day. I want no one to think I'm not great at what I do. And I don't want to get into a fight with anyone. And if that's your goal set for the day, you're going to miss out on lots. I don't want to feel any negative emotions. And if that's your goal for the day, you might have some good days, but you don't get to reach your potential because you have to be willing to say, hey, somebody might say, that's not your place in this conversation. And that could be okay.
Right.
Does that
Right.
resonate with you, Kai?
Oh, it does, and I'm curious where where the idea of, unconscious contracts fall in that, because I found that fascinating. Because you say that a lot of people are walking around with these unconscious contracts that lead to burnout and imposter syndrome that you were just talking about. People pleasing is another one. What does how does unconscious contract fall into what you were just talking about, and what does it look like in everyday life?
Yeah. So somebody's going to walk into the office. Let's talk about this woman I was just speaking with today. And she's probably waking up every day and saying, today, I'm going to make myself and my company as successful as I possibly can. If you met her for coffee at 8 a.m., that's probably what she would say. She's super well intentioned, really smart, super positive human being. That's what she'd say. And that's her conscious, as you said, contract or commitment. Great. If I'm watching her throughout the day, what actually is happening is at 10 o'clock in a staff meeting, she's not articulating a disagreement she has with something that's being said. At noon in a meeting she's having with somebody who works for her, she's holding back a little feedback that she has for that person that she thinks might make them a better employee.
Mm,
At 6 p.m., when she gets home and one of her kids doesn't talk kindly to her, she's letting it blow over because they've had a hard day. And look, sometimes that's fine. But her conscious commitment is, hey, I'm going to be my best self today. And what if I were looking at that day with her, I would say, your unconscious commitment is the results of the day. And the results of the day is you withheld parts of yourself again and again and again. So instead of, I'm not going to shame her for that. I'm just trying to bring her self awareness to that. Hey, we'll call her Beth. Hey, Beth, it sounds to me like you're unconsciously committing to showing up about 60% at work and at home. And that's cool. But if that's true, let's look at other ways you've been doing that for the last few months. How does that seem familiar? Instead of telling her, hey, Beth, let's do a power pose and you're the greatest person ever, that's not going to work. I actually want her to understand the part of her that is getting a benefit from being unconsciously committed to, 'cause there's lots of parts of her that are committed to that.
right, right. How do we spot that? Right? Like internally, because like I'm curious, like what's the because we have these hidden agreements. Like it sounds like we have these hidden agreements with ourselves,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
ones that we, I guess, even don't even realize that we signed that agreement with
right.
ourselves, right? So, what can a person do to spot that
Yeah,
without somebody having to like point it out to them?
are you game to play, Kai?
Absolutely,
You
yeah.
told
Let's
me
do
before
it.
we started I was allowed to ask
Yeah,
you questions. Okay,
let's
cool.
go. Yeah.
Great. Okay, Kai, what is one thing you say you want? And by the way, my story is you're a very positive human.
Yeah.
So, well, let's be a little honest here. Like,
Oh, yeah.
let's just grant that you're an enormously positive guy. So the world
I
is your
I I
oyster.
am I am I am positive, but I'm also very genuine. Like
Right.
I make it a point to always stay genuine and honest. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. What's one thing you say you want routinely,
Mhm.
but that you do not have?
One thing that I say that I want that I do not have. Good question. A house, I would say. Like I live in a very nice like luxury like condo. Like it's gorgeous. I love it. But like I kind of always wanted a
Huh.
house. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And for how long have you wanted a house?
Oh gosh, since I graduated from college, so this was 2009.
Okay, cool. And what do you tell yourself is the main reason you do not have a house today?
2 reasons. One, because it's so dang expensive to live where I would want to live, and number 2, there's a fear that I have of being tied down to one spot.
Oh,
Because I
great.
travel a lot and I move around a lot, and so,
Oh,
like, I have
yeah.
this internal fear that I'm gonna be tied down to one spot for a very long time, and that
Oh
makes me
my
uncomfortable.
gosh. Plus, it's a house. Like it's not
Yeah.
surrounded by other houses so that you have to
Yes.
lock and leave,
Mhm.
great. That they're both interesting. The first one's interesting to me that we could explore more deeply if we had more time in the sense of the phrase you said, it's too dang expensive to live where I would want to live. So it might be interesting to explore your unconscious relationship to certain places being acceptable to you and certain
Yeah.
places not being and what that's all about. That would be fun to dive into.
Yeah.
The second thing, even more interesting, and that is where you say you have a conscious commitment, I want to live in a house, there's something I'm hearing, which is I want to have maximum freedom.
Mm. Mhm.
And so I might play with you around that. Like, so it sounds like you're unconsciously committed, at least in this way,
Yeah.
to optimizing for freedom instead of obligation
Yeah.
or
I would say that.
one
Yeah.
place, like monotony.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's funny because I never it's something that's always been in my brain, but I never like really outwardly like thought about it or talked about it. It's something I've always wanted, but I never like actively said it out loud and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder, is this lens that you seem to have, at least in this case, for not wanting to be tied down, either obligation or monotony or whatever, does it show up in any other places in your life?
Ooh. I
Like,
think
do
yeah, I
you
mean, I
make
think
backup plans?
I would say so only because my fear, one of my biggest fears is plateauing and getting too content with my comfort. I know that sounds weird, right? Because like right now, like like for example, like where I live right now, I'm content. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm comfortable, right? And so sometimes I'm afraid to do things in life because I'm so comfortable and content with where I am
Totally.
that, there's this fear of taking a risk. Will I lose this comfort? And am I able to live uncomfortably for a while? And that scares me.
You make perfect sense to me. So when I'm thinking about an unconscious contract or an unconscious commitment, what I'm asking is, what is he optimizing for? Oh, he just told me he, like many people, likes comfort.
Mhm.
And you make sense. That is rational. Like, I'd rather have what I know to be great. You talked laudably about this condo in which you live. You
Yeah.
sounds great. Sounds off the hook. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, what is? And it's a sure thing.
Mhm.
And if you want to talk about selling or growing your business or finding the next level of success, one of the biggest, and the thing is, this isn't really like an imposter voice. It actually isn't. It's just like, it's awfully nice to be comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that creates a bunch, by the way, that creates a ton of what I call in my book and Gay Hendricks first labeled upper limit issues,
Mhm.
which is
Right.
I'm allowed to be this happy, this successful. My podcast is allowed to have this many downloads per week. I
Right.
have this many reviews on my pod, even though what I want is 2x that number of views. By the way, go
Right.
review Kai's pod right now. I
Yes,
know it's a little
please.
hard,
Yes.
but please go
Do it.
do it. It really matters to him, even if he doesn't tell
Hit
you.
pause and come back.
Yeah,
Come back.
exactly. We'll be here. So you can develop these ceilings and they're super unconscious and then you just play within them because the unknown is unknown and it's not that friendly to think about it from a comfortable spot in your condo.
Yeah. No, it's very true. And what I one thing I love because you have this strength because context. I work in the corporate world, right? So I work in digital marketing. I work for a digital marketing agency. I've been working in digital marketing for 15 years, all in the corporate world. And I have clients that are all corporate, and like it's just been my life. So I'm very used to like the corporate business world. One of your strengths is blending conscious leadership with real world business experience, which I appreciate because the position that I'm in, I'm the head strategist for my team at my job. And I'm very curious because I know you've worked with people like me before and higher. How do you help people like me and other people in similar leadership positions shift from reactive to intentional in those high stake moments that we often face, especially in the digital marketing world for an agency where we have tons of clients as things happen and boom, boom, boom. How do we shift from reactive to intentional? Because even with what we were just talking about, like a lot of the thing, I think sometimes the thing that holds me back is the fact that I am sometimes more reactive than intentional. Like I'm playing defense instead of doing some more offense. Can leaders shift that to
Yeah.
be more
Well,
intentional?
I love that question and it reflects so much self awareness already. So the first step is just getting aware of when you are being reactive. And my
Yeah.
guess is you know it. So,
Mhm.
and for people who are listening, the way you know if you're not on the game plan as you are, Kai, the way to check whether you're being reactive, there are some signals. One, pay attention to your body. What's your body doing? Did you just start to sweat like profusely when you were totally fine before? Does it
Yeah,
feel 15 degrees hotter in the room than it did before somebody just said the thing to you? Or your client told you that something was wrong in their website or whatever the heck they told you?
yeah.
Did that happen? The second thing is, are you offering an answer before somebody is finished speaking? Because
Mm,
almost always, if you are offering an answer in advance of them being done talking to you, you are right away going to be defensive and otherwise known as reactive.
mhm.
And the next thing to pay attention to is, how attached am I in this moment to being right? That's another question.
Ooh,
Like,
I like that. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
my client's asking me a thing. Like, well, I'm the subject matter expert in this space, and they're asking me a thing about SEO and AI or whatever the heck they're asking you.
Yeah,
They're like, well, I have some hunch about this, and you sell hot dogs for a living, so why don't you let me take this one? But they
right,
have an
right.
opinion because they just listened to a podcast. So now they've got an opinion. You need to react to it. So you're going to notice, like, how attached to am I to being right now?
Yeah.
And in that moment, and you know this, what you want to be doing is taking a pause.
Mm,
And you want to ask yourself questions like, am I more attached in this moment to being right than I am to having a connection with this person I am talking to or who is emailing me? Am I feeling threatened right now? And is my threat actually connected to this specific situation or to something way older than that? Like 30 to however many, whatever age you are minus 10. If it's that old, then it probably has absolutely nothing to do with this client. And if you take a breath, you get to find that level, what we'll call presence, because we're both
mhm.
hippies a little bit, it sounds like. And
Yes.
then you get to respond from presence. And the best move, one of the fastest moves from presence to get to presence, from being triggered, which is what you're describing, or reactive, is just getting curious. And it would sound something like this. Hey, I understand you heard that podcast about AI and how it might relate to selling hot dogs online. What was really impactful to you about that? Or what about the person who spoke in that podcast struck you as really knowledgeable? I really want to learn from what you heard. And the last thing I'll say on this, Kai, and maybe it's useful, maybe it's not, is, am I reacting from time scarcity? Like, am I holding a story that if I actually take 3 breaths here, I won't have enough time to finish my day? Because anytime you're responding from scarcity, you're in a reactive state. And we have a story, I think, often that, well, if I'm reactive, I'll be quicker. And usually, if you're reactive, whatever
Mhm.
you're trying to resolve takes 10 times longer.
Mhm. Yeah, and I know a lot of, my audience with ADHD. I know that's a biggie for them because a lot of times our executive function is not functioning, and so, like, even when we want to push that start button, it's really, really difficult to push that start button to even get things rolling sometimes. On top of all of that, so, the other thing that I struggle with in this sense is the people pleasing side of it, right? Because, like, because this all sounds great, but, like, the sometimes, like, I know, I get messages from people that talk about people pleasing. I consider myself a recovering people pleaser, very much so, right? And so I know that there's a lot of people pleasers that are listening. So my question to you is, how do you practice that passionate ambivalence without becoming without it becoming an excuse for disengagement?
Yeah, well, I think it depends, if for people pleasers,
Yeah.
they may define engagement as Bob asks me to do something. I do it really well. That may be their definition of engagement. Like, that's what connection looks like, right? That's what high performance looks like.
Right.
And so one thing I'd say, and I wonder if this resonates with you, is just looking again at what your definition of engagement is. Because if your definition of engagement is, I want to bring the most important aspects of myself forward right now, Bob is asking me to do something that will interfere with the thing he told me 2 days ago I was supposed to get done in the next 3 days.
Mhm.
probably is impossible for me to do both of these things well in the next 3 days. Am I willing, in service of actually being successful, to engage in a little bit of conflict with Bob? And am I willing, as a recovering people pleaser, to define engagement as conflict sometimes, and that is healthy? Like, which some often the answer is no. I mean, if you're not a recovering people pleaser, the answer is no. I'm going to just keep pleasing until
Right.
you get totally burned out and you
Yes.
cannot function. And then you're going to say to yourself, well, I got to go get a new job because Bob is a jerk. And the challenge is you've never given Bob a chance because you never asked Bob if he could pull back one of his requests in service of your needs. So you're just gonna go keep playing that same exact pattern out in autopilot, people pleasing, for the next 25 years. And then by the time you're as old as me, you're gonna get some self-awareness. You're gonna be like, gosh, I sure wish I had talked to Bob with more authenticity.
Yes. Yes, it's funny that you say, well, like, age plays a factor because that's what happened to me, like, so I'm 38, and the corporate person that I am today is not the corporate person that I was back when I was in my 20s, and I always say that I'm a recovering people pleaser for the exact reasons that you had just stated. Because now I'm a lot more comfortable just having the conversation with somebody. If something is either a blocker for me or if something I don't think is a good idea, whether it's with a coworker or even with a client, right? I'm way more comfortable talking to them now because I used to just be like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll figure it out. When that was not healthy for me,
Not
emotionally,
healthy for
physically.
you,
Yeah.
also not healthy for their goals, right? If
Yeah.
you're being
Yeah.
hired as a as subject matter expert in digital marketing and you are never pushing back on your client that hired you to be an expert, you're not going to win together
Agreed.
and that
Agreed.
engagement. So I think part of this is like, this is when people tend to stay static in a role and they want to progress. This is one of the most important reasons. And this is an example of passionate ambivalence because it takes a little bit of detachment and a little bit of confidence to believe, hey, I can push back a little on Bob.
Right.
And actually, what's going to happen is it may hurt, maybe like challenging. It may challenge my like operating system for a while, for like 5 minutes. But then my relationship with Bob will be strengthened.
Right.
My outcomes that I deliver for Bob and my company or my organization are going to be better. And I'm going to be happier. And Bob is going to respect me more. Like,
Yeah.
if you could just try, sometimes people hear stuff like this, and I do worry about this. It sounds like, come on, Sue. I'm the way I am. And and that sounds daunting, right? And I get that. But what I'm literally asking, and you said recovering, so you know this, is if you could just do this one slight pivot 2% of the time, Bob would notice, you would notice, everyone in your family would notice. It would be drastic. It's not like you have to change 100%. You just
Right.
change 2.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you say the percentage thing because a coworker and I we have this thing between each other where we're like we're going to change 1% a day, just 1%. We don't have to hit a home run. We're just going to get a base hit today, and like that's okay. That's going towards our goal. And it's funny because so like I'm a big fan of the play and movie, but play specifically, Glengarry Glen Ross, which is
Oh,
written
yeah.
by David Mamet, right? And one of the big mottos, one of the big, lines from that movie and play is ABC, always be closing, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, it's always be closing, and so we especially in the corporate world, have this mindset of always be closing. With that said, how does your approach change that energy of a sales conversation? Because I've worked with a lot of sales guys. I've worked with a lot of salespeople, and like it's just a different world, and I'm sure they might be listening to this, being like, "Oh, that all sounds nice, but I can't. No, that's not how I operate." Can a sales conversation be changed from always be closing to something else?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Always be passionately ambivalent.
yeah,
Look, I've been selling for a really long time, and
Yeah,
I know that there are, like, this conventional wisdom of selling or this conventional something of selling, which is I love that phrase and that scene. If you haven't seen that film, go watch it on YouTube, that little snip, it's great.
yeah.
Um, and my aim, it's I think sometimes when I talk about my sales mindset that I'm proposing in the book, Never Ask for the Sale, when the mindset of passion ambivalence, people think, oh, that's so laid back. Oh, that'll never work. Or what will my boss think if it's the end of the month and I'm trying to hit quota and I'm doing this? And literally what I'm saying is not just that you will be more balanced in your life, happier, not just that, you will actually sell more to better prospects with longer term success and growth potential for those accounts if you are not pushing them. Because the more you push, or the more you discount, or the more you accommodate beyond what is reasonable, the less they value you and what you are offering.
I love this insight because I know that there's a lot of people listening who feel burnt out. They're stuck in the people pleasing mode of their life, and they're terrified to let go of the outcome.
Yeah.
And I understand that just from a personal level. So like for someone that's listening right now, that is feeling that burnt out feeling, that is a people pleaser, that is terrified to let go of the outcome. What's the very first move you would tell them to make today?
The first move I would ask them to do is I would ask them to remember and document how it feels right now, because their story is what they are doing is working for them. And unless they're willing to face that, and well, maybe it is. And if it is, great. So I'd ask them that question. And if they actually can say, it's not working for me, then I'm going to say, okay, great. If it's really not working for you, you have a story in your head that people pleasing, begging for sales, bending over backwards to make every possible person happy so that you can close a piece of business. You have a story that that is driving your success. How is it going?
Mm,
And the answer is usually not so great. I feel
right.
compromised. I'm not earning what I think I should be earning in relation to the effort that I'm putting in. And I'm like, cool, we're in agreement around that now. And then I will ask the question, like, are you willing to change the game? And they'll say, well, I want to. And they'll say, well, what does it mean to be willing? And I'd say, well, in order to be willing, you're going to have to be willing to take a little risk right now because we're going to step out of the comfortable for you, just like with you in your condo in your house. We're going to step away from the comfortable and you're going to have to try something different. But I'd just like you to try it 5% of the time for the next month. And what that's going to look like is before you say, hey, I'm going to text you tomorrow about this deal. And then I'm going to text you the next day. And then I'm going to text you the next day until I hear back. I want you to try letting your foot off the pedal and waiting to hear back from them on one out of every 20 deals. And then I want you to do an A B test and tell me which one makes you feel healthier and which one has a better close rate. And I put a lot of money on the alternative working better than the autopilot.
Yeah. I love that. And if you're listening right now and you're like, oh, Sue knows what she's talking about, she does know what she's talking about. She has her upcoming book, Never Ask for the Sale. When does that come out?
It's coming out September 9th. So
September 9th. So by the time that this airs, my friends, it's going to be out. So make sure that you go get your copy. I'm going to include a link to that book and to Sue's website. All of that information is going to be in the description of this podcast because I'm making it easy for you. No excuses, my friends. I want to see you clicking. I see you clicking on all of this. I want to see you get Sue's book. Sue, thank you so much, honestly, for joining me today, for sharing your insight, your energy, your wisdom. Like honestly, it always warms my heart again, like when I get to speak to somebody like you, which is I just learned so much. That's why I love like speaking with people like you because you teach me so much. I never go into any of these conversations thinking I'm the smartest person in the room. I go in it so excited to learn. And I know that there's going to be people that listen to this that are going to get something out of it as well. Wow, I feel like I just got a masterclass in leadership and self-acceptance, all of that rolled into one. A massive thank you to my guest, Sue Heilbronner, for coming on and sharing her wisdom with all of us today. My biggest takeaway, I think it has to be the idea of passionate ambivalence. Being deeply invested in the work, but emotionally unattached to the outcome. That is such a game changer for those of us who tend to attach our self worth to every single project and every single interaction. I also loved her perspective on clean agreements and how we create drama in our lives simply by not being clear about what we actually want or need. If you want to connect with Sue or grab a copy of her new book, Never Asked for the Sale, all of her links are right there in the show notes. Go over and show some love. And friends, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure that you like and subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And hey, leave a review if you can, and come hang out with me on social media at The Vibe with Kai, or visit my official website at thevibewithkai.com. And don't forget, if you need some more support, be sure to grab one of my ADHD digital guidebooks in the digital store, or join me on Patreon for that exclusive deep dive content we just keep for our little inner circle here. Again, it's only $5 a month. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. As always, much love, good vibes. I'll catch you next time. Bye.